going to do some gospel magic right now. I'm going to use a magic illusion to talk about 1 Kings 17, and it starts with like verse 2. Now, when I saw Andre Cole live in his performance, he did basically a standard magic show. But then at the end of his show, he would do a gospel presentation, but he would allow people the opportunity, if they wanted to leave the auditorium if they didn't want to see him present a religious talk or spiel. So I invite you to do the same right now. If you don't want to go through the Bible at this point, you're free to disconnect from this channel. I have and watch my other videos that I have, which I'm just doing plain magic tricks. Now, I thought was interesting here is this was in 1 Kings 17. There was a king named Ahab, and he ended up sinning against the Lord. He said he not only considered it trivial to commit the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, but he also married Jezebel, daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Sidonians. I know I'm probably slaughtering these words. And began to serve Baal and worship him. And because of that, the anger of the Lord of the God of Israel then, and it did more to arouse anger of the Lord the God of Israel than did all the kings of Israel before him. Now because of this, God sent a famine to the land. And this is about, we're going to talk about Elijah here. Now Elijah, the Tishbite from Tishbe in Gilead, said to Ahab, "As the Lord the God of Israel lives, whom I serve, there will be neither dew nor rain in the next few years except by my word." But even though there was a famine in the land, God took care of his prophet. Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah, "Leave here, turn eastward, and hide in the Kerith ravine, east of the Jordan. You will drink from the brook, and I have directed the ravens to supply you with food there." Now, I find this interesting that God would use ravens to feed his prophets. Why didn't he just have them stay at some rich person's house, somebody with wealthy who could take care of him? Why have ravens help him out? In fact, ravens of all birds, why not an eagle or some, majestic bird? Because ravens have been looked at as pests. Like right here, it says, common ravens have coexisted with humans for thousands of years, and in some areas have been so numerous that people have regarded them as pests. In fact, they're even part of superstition and things, where people, sometimes a raven would be a bad omen. In fact, Walt Disney, in his movie Sleeping Beauty, what pet did the evil queen have? A raven. Another thing I thought was interesting is it would use ravens. You can go back to the New Testament. If I can find this one, it would be Matthew 6:25. I guess I did not mark it here, but we'll go there. Matthew 6:25. Here's Christ. This is Jesus teaching the people. "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they?" Now eventually, the river that he was drinking from, or the brook, I believe they called it a brook, had dried up. So he did what the Lord had told him. He went to the Kerith ravine east of the Jordan and stayed there. The ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning, and bread and meat in the morning, and he drank from the brook. Now this part is really interesting. Sometime later the brook dried up because there had been no rain in the land. Then the word of the Lord came to him. Go at once to Zarephath in the region of Sidon and stay there. I have directed a widow there to supply you with food. A widow? Imagine if you're a widow, you lost your husband and you're trying to raise your son, and then this prophet comes up to you and says, "Oh, you got to take care of me." A widow, again, didn't send him to some very rich and wealthy king or individual with lots of money, a widow of all people. So he went to Zarephath. When he came to the town gate, a widow was there gathering sticks. He called to her and asked, "Would you bring me a little water in a jar so that I may have a drink?" As she was going to get it, he called, "And bring me, please, a piece of bread." And here's how she answers. "As surely as the Lord your God lives," she replied, "I don't have any bread, only a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug." It's a bit arrogant for him to try to ask her for something when she doesn't have anything, right? "I am gathering a few sticks to take home and make a meal for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die." Elijah said to her, "Don't be afraid. Go home and do as you have said. But first make a small loaf of bread for me from what you have and bring it to me, and then make something for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. The jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord sends rain on the land." So she went away and did as Elijah had told her. So there was food every day for Elijah and for the woman. So I'm going to illustrate that with here. I have a jug of water, represents the flour and the oil from the woman's jar, as you can see. So the next day, God refilled her jug of water, her jug of oil, and her jar of flour, just like this. And the next day, her jar of oil and her jug of flour was refilled, just like this. And the next day, her jug of oil and her jar of flour was refilled. So God not only provided for the widow woman and her son, but also provided for Elijah, using her to feed Elijah, just like he did the ravens, the lowliest of the people, the lowliest of the animals. God used. So it means God uses us the same way, the lowliest of the people. If you think you're not significant, God will use you. What I also thought was interesting, it says in James 1:27, I have that one. It would have been helpful if I marked it, but here we go. James comes after Hebrews. There's Hebrews. James 1:27 says, and this was James talking or writing, "Religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this, to look after orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world." So God follows exactly what he teaches. by taking care of the widow woman while taking care of his prophet Elijah. By the way, there's more water. There's more. Look at that. There's even more in there. It just keeps going and going and going. Of course, another interesting thing too is what happened is, this is another part I thought was pretty interesting, is her son ends up dying. Her son ends up dying. And, oh, First Kings, what was it? First King, oh, I'm on the wrong one. First Kings 17. Her son ends up dying, if I can find it here. Then Elijah says, "Give me your son." Elijah replied. He took him from her arms, carried him to the upper room where he was staying, and laid him on his bed. Then he cried out to the Lord, "Lord, my God, have you brought tragedy even on this widow I am staying with by causing her son to die?" Then he stretched himself out on the boy 3 times and cried out to the Lord, "Lord, my God, let this boy's life return to him." The Lord heard Elijah's cry, and the boy's life returned to him, and he lived. Elijah picked up the child and carried him down from the room into the house. He gave him to his mother and said, "Look, your son is alive." Then the woman said to Elijah, "Now I know that you are a man of God, and that the word of the Lord from your mouth is the truth." Wait a minute. There's more. Wait a minute. There's more in here. There's more oil and flour and what? Did you not like? I'm just thinking, woman, did you not like see your flour and your oil multiplying daily from day to day to day to day to day to day? Wait a minute. There's even more here. Look at that. And from day to day. Was that not sign enough for her to know that God is God and that she should worship him? But no. Her son had to die, and the prophet had to raise him back from the dead. So apparently there's a purpose for that. Now I know that you are a true man of God. She had to do this really great sign of raising his son from the dead. It's interesting though, because kind of the similar too is what Jesus had to do back when he did all these different miracles, and it wasn't until he actually raised some people from the dead that some people took notice and like, wait a minute. So I was hoping you enjoyed that. Hope you have a good Sunday.